Saturday has a way of turning up the quiet stories a little louder, doesn't it? It's September 13th, 2025, and today we're doing something we don't always do on this show, a focused, single-story deep dive on a legal twist with big implications for every American who holds a passport. We're looking at a bill that would shift a power that sits at the intersection of national security and civil liberties, from the courts to the executive branch, specifically to the Secretary of State, and what that could mean for who gets to travel, who gets to be heard, and who gets to move freely across borders. This is one of those stories that starts with a narrow idea, but quickly branches into questions about due process, political abuse, and the future of how we define security in a country that prizes both safety and freedom. So settle in as we walk through what this bill says, why it's causing such a loud fight, and what comes next when the government could revoke a passport based not on a proven crime but on accusations of material support to terrorism, even if there's no trial, no conviction, no judge weighing the evidence, before a person loses one of the most basic tools for movement in the world today. First, a little scene setter. In Florida, Representative Brian Mast has introduced a 2025 bill that would give the Secretary of State broad power to order passport revocation or denial for Americans accused of providing material support to terrorism. The bill would move beyond the current framework, where, today, courts can impose passport restrictions after a conviction. The proposal has sparked a heated, nationwide debate about whether the executive branch should wield such power without court oversight, and whether this could become a tool for political or investigative overreach. As of today, September 13th, 2025, the bill has not become law, but it's heading for a House hearing that will test not only its legality, but its political viability and the public mood around civil liberties and security. Let's unpack what's at stake. Supporters describe this as a necessary national security measure, aiming to keep suspected terrorists and traffickers from traveling while investigators pursue leads. They argue that in an age of global movement and rapid disruption, waiting for a conviction before taking travel-related action can be a dangerous delay. They point to cases where foreign travel could be a critical thread in a broader threat network and say swift executive action could prevent harm. Critics, including high-profile civil liberties groups like the ACLU and the Freedom of the Press Foundation, warn that the bill's vague language creates an opening for political abuse. If the veto power rests with a single official without neutral, independent oversight, opponents fear it could be misused against journalists, activists, or ordinary travelers who hold unpopular views or associations. To understand what this means, it helps to contrast the current law with the proposed approach. Today, the State Department can revoke or restrict a passport in some cases, but typically that power follows a legal process. There needs to be a conviction, or at least a robust evidentiary basis reviewed in a judicial setting. The Mast bill would shift part of that gatekeeping to the Secretary of State, with less or potentially no court oversight. Civil liberties lawyers warn that removing the neutral judge's weigh-in, the essential safeguard that protects individuals from arbitrary government action, could tilt the balance away from due process. The debate isn't just abstract. It asks, if a government actor can restrict a core credential like a passport based on accusations rather than proven crimes, what happens to the right to travel, to seek work, to participate in academic life, or to report on matters that may be politically sensitive? The bill outlines two tracks. In one, the Secretary could deny or cancel a passport for someone convicted of terrorism-related offenses. In the other, there's language that could reach beyond convictions to cases where someone has been charged but not yet tried, effectively letting the government cut travel sanctions before a trial. The implications are broad. Imagine a journalist reporting from abroad who happens to be scrutinized for political connections, or an activist whose work, however peaceful, becomes a target for government actions designed to curb mobility. For everyday travelers, the risk is even more immediate. A sudden denial or cancellation could strand families, complicate work or study plans, and erode confidence in the reliability of travel documents. There's a larger arc here about how democracies handle risk in an era of asymmetric threats. We've seen evolving debates over surveillance, due process, and the power to criminalize thought or association through the language of security. What makes this particular proposal stand out is that it contemplates moving a core, identity-determined tool, your passport, into a faster, executive decision-making track that bypasses the traditional judicial check. It raises practical questions. How would evidence be evaluated? What standards would apply to material support, a term that can be broad and prosecutorially flexible? Would there be an appeals process? And how transparent would decisions be? And crucially, who would be protected if the action is taken in error or against people who aren't actual threats? As we look at potential next steps, the House hearing will be a key moment to weigh constitutional concerns against security objectives. The big picture question for listeners is this: in a country that cherishes due process and free speech, what are we willing to trade for a perceived increase in safety? And who bears the cost when a tool meant to protect the public can also silence travel for those who are not the target of any threat? The answer isn't simple, and that's why this story deserves a dedicated, thoughtful episode. We'll continue to follow how lawmakers, civil liberties advocates, and security experts frame the trade-offs, what revisions, if any, emerge, and what this could mean for the future of travel, journalism, advocacy, and ordinary life in a world where borders feel both more open and more fragile. Thanks for listening as we unpacked the heart of this proposal, the arguments on both sides, and the practical realities of what could come next. For more background, context, and ongoing updates, visit visaverge.com and keep an ear out for our follow-up as this story develops.